Hey guys, what's going on? It's Rekt Capital and welcome back to the Rekt Capital channel. Thank you so much for joining me in today's video update about the death cross and whether or not it is confirmed. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future and let's dive right in. So this is today's price action on Bitcoin and you can see that the 50 EMA and the 200 EMA are converging rather quickly towards one another in for a cross which is scheduled at this current pace of convergence, scheduled for the 2nd of July. Of course, these EMAs are actually dynamic resistances and supports, and of course this case these both are resistances at the moment, but they are dynamic levels that we have to pay attention to going forward, and they will be changing with the differences in price. So if we just go back to June 15th, you can see how Bitcoin was actually trying to break past the 200 EMA, and the fact that EMA, or at least apologies, Bitcoin was at 41,000, you can see how the death cross was pushed back into late July. So you can see that that sort of small increase in price action really had an impact on how quickly that death cross would occur. So Bitcoin being at a price point of 41,000 essentially pushed it back by 5 weeks. But of course, we've since rejected from the 200 EMA, and now we're bringing back the death cross by a few weeks now, and it's scheduled for the 2nd of July. So going back to May 31st, when I first created the video on YouTube about the death cross, it was going to happen in mid-June. And of course it is mid-June right now, but because of the great reaction that we've had from Bitcoin, of course, since this low over here, we've really rallied quite tremendously. That was able to totally change the mid-June projection. But if we just focus on historically what tends to happen, since the first crash, historically, whenever Bitcoin breaks down from the top over here and breaks down towards the downside, a death cross from that crash happens within 107 or 149 days of that initial crash. So at the moment, what we're seeing from the death cross, at least, is that with price action going up towards the downside, or at least going up towards the upside, apologies, we see the further postponing of the death cross, pushing it back closer and closer towards this area. So let's just focus on how the death cross has evolved throughout June. June 8th, you can see right over here, mid-June is the projection for the death cross. But then we see a bit of a reaction from the lows here. Still mid-June is the projection, but then once we get to 37,000, the projection is the 24th of June as per the changing EMAs. And as we saw a 39k get tagged here, you can see that the projection was getting pushed back into the future, 30th of June right here. And these EMAs started to diverge a bit from one another. And of course, once we tagged the 200 EMA at 40,000, you can see how that divergence occurred even more, pushing back price, or at least the possibility of a potential death cross, into the future by a few more weeks to mid-July. So really interesting to see how these price changes have been pushing price back by a few weeks at a time. So when you just focus on Bitcoin at 40,500, the projection was for mid-July. But at 41,000, you can see that the projection was now a week or so later in the future. So small price moves are actually postponing the death cross quite significantly. And the thing about pushing price back into the future, or at least pushing the death cross back into the future, postponing it, that just means that whenever we see an uptick in price action, Bitcoin's price, or at least the death cross, is getting closer to that historically relevant area where we tend to see death crosses actually occur, historically speaking, from that first initial crash. So yes, that death cross is quite likely to occur. The fact that we've crashed recently, or at least pulled back from the 200 EMA, means that we're going to get a death cross in early July, maybe late June if we pull back a bit more. But the key thing to bear in mind is to break past this 200 EMA, as I mentioned in yesterday's video, and I spoke about this in a bit more detail as to what I'm watching for that 200 EMA to give way, because that's going to essentially give way to a further uptrend towards the mid 40s, and a further uptrend would push back the death cross by many weeks. And in fact, by pushing it back into this historical region, well, then it looks like if we get that uptrend, history will repeat in a sense that the death cross will happen 107 to 150 days after that initial crash. That tends to happen historically. And in fact, if you just look here, when Bitcoin was trying to break the 200 EMA at 41,000, Bitcoin was able to press that death cross further into the future, into late July. Right? But if we were to go a little bit higher to 42,000, 43,000, then you'd see that we'd already enter this period that is historically relevant for death crosses. So that's really interesting, because at the moment we're ahead of schedule in terms of the death cross happening, historically speaking, because we never see such a quick death cross occur. But if we see price increases from now, and price appreciation happen upon breakout past the 200 EMA, then we're going to get that death cross right back into this historically relevant area, and it would be history repeating itself in terms of the death cross. And the death cross itself doesn't necessarily have to translate into further downside. That has been the case historically speaking, but what we need to focus on more, because the death cross is just a signal. It's just one technical analysis, one tool of technical analysis, and we really need to focus on other things. And one of those things would be to hold the 30,000 area, which Bitcoin has been doing relatively well for a few weeks now. And of course, we have that weekly high or low as well. So even if we get a death cross, that weekly high or low and that 30,000 area, they would need to break down to confirm further downside and that death cross really translating into price. But until that happens, first of all, we don't even have a death cross yet. And second of all, we're still holding very pivotal key areas of support. So no need to rush to any further downside or breaking down, because we don't have any confirmation of that happening. We don't have confirmation of that happening in the death cross because it hasn't happened yet, but also we haven't had any support loss here. In fact, we've seen a fantastic rebound towards the 200 EMA, which we might be breaking relatively soon. Feel free to check out yesterday's video about the 200 EMA, but in any case, guys, that's about it for today's video about the death cross. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you enjoyed it. I'm Rekt Capital, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Speak to you soon.